Newspaper last weekend, a whole article about this. And so we begin by inviting the great Australian William Cooper's great niece and granddaughter, Auntie Daphne Millward, Uncle Vincent Peters, to do an acknowledgement of country and to their family's deep living relationship, to the event we celebrate and to its history. Over to you. You going to speak?
Yeah.
All right.
We've got
Off you go.
Auntie Daphne's the granddaughter.
Granddaughter. Who's beginning? Welcome.
Hello, and Womenjika. Womenjika means welcome in the Warwarrung language of the Kulin Nation, on whose land we're on this evening. I'd also like to say Kalimna Yalanga Kalimna, and that's also saying welcome in my country's language, Yorta Yorta. Now, Grandfather Cooper is my great uncle, and he's also my grandfather, and in traditional way. And if you can understand how that works, good on you. But if you'd like to know more, don't ask me, ask Brother Boydie. On behalf of the family, I'd just like to say that we're very proud of Grandfather Cooper and the work that he's done for our family, our clan, and our community. He's a leader and spokesperson for our people when we needed a voice to tell the rest of Australia about our struggles to become part of the wider community when our people left the reserves and missions, particularly here in Victoria and New South Wales. So we pay respect to Grandfather Cooper and all those who worked with him to achieve the things that we have in our community today. Thank you.
I'm Vincent Peters. My grandfather came from Cumragunja Mission Station, and we also have a family connection to Uncle Boydie. It's great to see you, Uncle Boydie, in here today. I hope when I tell your story of 2017, I've got everything right. Uncle Boydie is a grandson of William Cooper, and he took a letter William when he took the letter to the consulate, German consulate in Melbourne, they didn't send it on. And it always disappointed the family, disappointed his friends. In 2017, Uncle Boydie prepared a replica of that letter. They took it over and presented it to the German government. So it finally got delivered. And it was treated with the great respect and solemnity of what it stood for. And I'm glad to see Uncle Boydie here tonight. And perhaps it would have been great for him to get up and present that. Now for the acknowledgement. I can't do a welcome to country, but I can do an acknowledgement. The thing about Indigenous culture, we all get to know where everybody came from, and we can trace that back a long way. And our people were actually displaced from their lands in the 1860s. In 1864, my great-grandparents were actually placed on Corrandu. It was only recently we found out where we were from. Out of respect, we do an acknowledgement rather than a welcome. So I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Bunurong peoples, of which the local Yalukit Willem clan, the river people, were also known in those early colonial times as the Yarra tribes. They were part of the greater alliance of Kulin nations, of which I am descendant. I would like to pay my respects to their elders and to your elders, past and present. I also pay my respects to those of their younger ones and your younger ones, rising to this responsible honour in the future. I pay my respects also to the ancestors who lived out their lives on this country. I would like to thank them for their wonderful legacies of endurance, of leadership, of strength, of resilience and survival. With great respect, I thank them for our wonderful heritage of life on the country we all love and belong to today. Thank you.
That is a big job. In the synagogue is a cupboard. It's called a cupboard in Hebrew. It's the place in which we put the scrolls of the first books of the Bible. And we decorate them. And one of the scrolls has its main decoration bells, which you place on the scroll, so that people know when the scroll is being carried around the synagogue. One of those scrolls, a number of the scrolls come from Germany, sent by people who knew what was coming. And the bells on one of the scrolls came from the gutter in Munich, where it was thrown, almost destroyed, picked up and brought to Israel, restored, and we brought it to Australia. So, Kristallnacht, the destruction of Germany's synagogues, the placing of tens of thousands of people in concentration camps, is very much part of this building's story. So I would like to introduce now the one of the creators of the Cantata, Ron Jontef Hutter. He was born in South Africa. He studied violin and music in Jerusalem and later qualified as a clinical psychologist. Back in South Africa, he joined the National Symphony Orchestra while he worked in his professional practice. Music took over his life following his migration to Australia in 1988. Music in Melbourne and in Berlin. And he writes. He's the author of a satirical novel and a play. He lectures on anti-Semitism in Europe and in America. And together with Alon, he constructed the Kristallnacht cantata, which is based on his research. He's served as Senior Research Fellow of the Berlin International Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism. He's an editor of the Journal of Contemporary European Anti-Semitism and works with the German chapter of Scholars for Peace in the Middle East. And so I'd like to ask Ron if he'd come forward to speak.
Thank you for your kind introduction, Rabbi Levi. And good evening, everyone. So I'm Ron Yontov Hutter, the founder and lyricist of the Kristallnacht Cantata, A Voice of Courage. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the world premiere of this orchestral and choral work. Tonight's audience consists of people from various communities and organizations, and I'm pleased to see Abe Schwartz from the William Cooper Legacy, Alex Katz from the Council of Christians and Jews, Arnold Schmerling of Stand Up, Eli Rabinovitz from We Are Here project, and members of the Russian and German-speaking communities. And I am particularly honored to see that Uncle Boydie has managed to attend this concert today. So thank you so much, Uncle Boydie. I'm deeply, deeply honored by that. Your grandfather and my grandfather had some connection, even though they never met. I'm delighted to see that Lady Anna Cowan has also graced us with her presence here today. And welcome and thank you so much for coming. I also understand that Deborah Cheetham is here today. And again, we are very honored by your presence. Thank you so much. I'm also delighted to see members of the Chinese and Indian communities. Many German Jews who managed to escape were warmly welcomed in Shanghai and Gujarat. We don't forget. Thank you. I'm also delighted to see my good friends Roland and Birgit Vogel here tonight, as well as Sue Knight, who have been very encouraging and a keen observer during the cantata's development. Thank you. And also to Judy Curtin, who has followed developments from the beginning, and Herb Epstein for your support. Thank you very much. We welcome those from various Christian churches and organizations. Your presence celebrates William Cooper's mission of cross-cultural acceptance and respect. In particular, I'm delighted to introduce Pastors Barbara and Norman Miller from the Tabernacle of David Church in Cairns. Barbara has written a must-read book on William Cooper, which I highly recommend, titled White Australia Has a Black History. I think it's available outside. So I would like to invite Pastor Miller to read a passage from the Bible in William Cooper's honor.
I just want to say my husband and I are very honoured to be here, and thank you, Rabbi, and thank you, Ron, and all those who put this together tonight. I want to honour Hashem. I want to honour elders of the Indigenous and Jewish and other communities here tonight. And I believe that this night is going to be a blessing for each and every one of you. And I want to just speak a blessing over you from Isaiah 62, 1-7. And that blessing, I want to send that out over everyone here tonight and over Israel and the Jewish community in particular worldwide. So reading from the Tanakh, Isaiah 62, for Zion's sake I will not keep silent. For Jerusalem's sake I will not remain quiet, till her vindication shines out like the dawn, her salvation like a blazing torch. The nations will see her vindication, and all kings your glory. You will be called by a new name that the mouth of the Lord will bestow. You will be a crown of splendour in the Lord's hand, a royal diadem in the hand of Hashem. No longer will they call you deserted or name your land desolate, but you will be called Hephzibah and your land Beulah. For the Lord will take delight in you, and your land will be married. As a young man marries a young woman, so will your builder marry you. As the bridegroom rejoices over his bride, so will Hashem rejoice over you. I have posted watchmen on your walls, Jerusalem. They will never be silent, day or night. You who call on the Lord, give yourselves no rest, and give him no rest until he establishes Jerusalem and makes her a praise on all the earth. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. About 18 months ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Auntie Daphne, who taught me much about the Yorta Yorta people and endeared me to her community. Earlier this year, I was warmly welcomed to the Mullam Mullam gathering place, where I met Aunties Irene, Uncle Vince, the choir, and their CEO, Elke Smell. I would like to introduce you to Auntie Irene and the indigenous choir Yengali Mullam.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I am Auntie Irene Norman, and tonight is so special for Yengali Mullam, our singing group. As Ron said, we were invited here to join in, and to us it's very, very special to see such a joining of different cultures that mean so much to each other. Now, technical difficulties. I have a poem to read to you, and this poem is dedicated to the memory of William Cooper, the only man in the world to lead a protest against the actions of the German stormtroopers and their superiors on Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass, on the 10th and 11th of November 1938. An older man who was not considered a citizen in his own country of Australia because of the government of the time's attitude to Australia's Indigenous population. It's written by me, Auntie Irene Norman, on behalf of Yengali Mullam for the remembrance event held here at St Kilda on this date, encompassing the conjoined experiences of the Indigenous and Jewish communities. And it is called One Man's Voice. His was a strong voice in a world that didn't care, to protest the vile treatment of another people, half a world away, over there. Hundreds of Jewish folks were dead from the night of the broken glass. Frightened people who had done no wrong 30,000 more into concentration camps would pass. William's inspiration was a song. Its words had been in his heart for so long. Burafera, that told of the Jewish people, so strong. The song's message was clear. Tyranny in this world does not belong. William was an old man then. He and his people were dispossessed, not recognised as citizens in their own land. Yet the German actions against the Jews on Kristallnacht outraged him. Someone had to take a stand. So from Footscray to Collins Street, with his compatriots by his side, he strode. He wanted to meet with the German consul, a large protest to unload. But Dr. Dreschler would not see him, and William Cooper thought, well, I've delivered my letter of protest. That's that. We've tried our very, very best. My words and actions have fallen flat. But no, his actions echoed around the world, never to be forgotten by the Indigenous and Jewish communities, every man, woman, boy and girl. Oh, what one man's voice can do. Thank you. And in honour of tonight, we have a framed version of the poem with a picture of and the dedication there. So I'd like to give to the Rabbi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right.
The modern lyrics that we have to Burafera were provided by Auntie Geraldine Briggs, Auntie Zita's mum. Auntie Zita is a member of our community today. The original title is Turn Back Pharaoh's Army, and the translation was done by Elder Auntie Teresa Clements, or as Auntie Zita called her, Kuka Yarmak, which meant Grandmother Yarmak. That was her name. They converted this ancient Jewish song, a song of triumph, to Yorta Yorta, another ancient language, Burafera.
Right.
Thank you. Our next song is Wanju, and it's by Gina Williams. And it's in the Noongar language, and the Noongar country is in Western Australia and the region around Perth. And as her song says, it doesn't matter where you come from, you are welcome. Whether you're from the north, the south, the east or the west, you are welcome. And we sing the song today in the Noongar language and also in English, so as you get to understand what the words are about. Thank you. Thank you. Our next song is Ukulele. Ukulele is actually a beautiful song, and it was written originally by Joe Geyer, who performed it well, beautifully, and so much so that many vocalists and bands enjoy singing the song about the red and the black and the gold. Ukulele means sing in Guyu Yimatha, so even sometimes I have trouble spelling some of our, or sounding some of our Aboriginal names. Thank you. Our next song is Milaithina. Milaithina is a song about connection to country. And it's actually made from a reconstructed language. Kāni means language. There were many languages in Tasmania, and Palawa Kāni was one of them. It's a new single language representing all of the extinct Aboriginal languages once spoken in Tasmania. The language became extinct in 1905 when the last speaker, Fanny Cochrane-Smith, died. And due to scarcity of records on the language, all of the language, what they did was put all of the words that they could find, found the meanings of them, and put them together, and it's known as Palawa. Most people from Tasmania who identify as Aboriginal will call themselves Palawa, but there are 12 tribes, and we don't know the names of all of those tribes. So this reconstructed language brings us this beautiful song. We first sing it in Palawa Kāni, and then we explain the words.
This land is our land. This land is our land. From Eddystone Point to Oyster Cove, from Mount Wellington to the Bass Strait Islands. This land is us blackfellas. We blackfellas are this land. We blackfellas are this land.
Thank you. Our last song is Amazing Grace. A beautiful and popular hymn sung all around the world. It was written by John Newton. John was a former slave ship hand, and then he was so good at his job that he became captain of his own slave ship. He later became an Anglican clergyman. It turned out that when he was coming home and crossing the Atlantic, there was a storm blew up, and he thought he was going to go down with the ship and all the crew. So he prayed to his God and said, if I get out of this, if we live to survive, I'm going back to England. I'm changing my ways. And that's what he did. And that's why he became a clergyman. Many aspects of the song we like to think he actually wrote about himself. I felt like a wretch who was blind but now sees, and he was saved by the grace of God. He campaigned for the abolishment of slavery, which was outlawed in his home country in England in 1807. And 7 months later, John died. Today, we love singing the song and telling the story. And Ron will be joining us, adding those great notes from his violin. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
Whoa, we got lost in the music. We got lost in the music as we do. Thank you very, very much. It's been such an honour tonight. And thank you, Yangali.
Thanks, Ron, for joining in with us. And thanks very much to the organisers of this wonderful event for having us along tonight. It's really fantastic for us to be here. Thank you.
This is an amazing mixture of cultures and history. And I couldn't help thinking, as we heard the didgeridoo, that the first European settler ever to put Aboriginal music to notation, Western notation, was a man called Isaac Nathan. And he conducted the first classical music concerts in Melbourne, and then, believe it or not, took on the post of musical director at St Mary's Cathedral in Sydney. But he took the time to go out into the bush, and he caught the first notes ever written down of Indigenous Australian music. So we should remember Isaac Nathan and understand that his great-grandson was Sir Charles Mackerras, the important Australian conductor. So we thank you very much indeed. It was wonderful, and particularly the conductor. Terrific. And before the intermission, before the cantata, Alon Trigger wants to introduce to us a piece called Cantillations, based on the trop that has come down to us for the singing of the Torah. And I believe he's going to introduce, Alon is going to speak and sing the first verses of the book of Genesis. So, Alon.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Levi. I have here our maestro, Dr. David Cram, joining us.
Hi. Lovely to see you.
Thank you very much. So
both of them marvelous.
This is a real privilege to be here. I am obviously very excited and somewhat sleep deprived. I'll say hi to my mom that is in Israel, Shalom Ima. I know she's watching and very excited with me. So that's wonderful. I would like to thank our friends for coming. Thank you very much. Thank you. Choir. I think besides the beautiful music that we heard, we really have to thank them for their presence here. And we really have a rare chance to thank William Cooper for what he did for our community many, many years ago. I believe that us as a community, we have a moral debt towards William Cooper that stood up for us at a time that hardly anyone cared. And I personally feel that I have a personal debt towards William Cooper and what he did as being a descendant of Holocaust survivor, my maternal grandmother, probably watching now through live stream with my mom at home. So, Shalom Savta. So that's wonderful. So let's see, what are we doing now? I'm a bit sleep deprived, I'm sorry.
Alon.
Yep.
I'm David, by the way.
Yeah, so David.
Welcome, everybody. And I'm very privileged to conduct two works of Alon. The first will be an orchestral work. So while the orchestra is coming in, and the orchestra comes from far and wide, thank you, Ron Yontov-Hutto, for being the orchestral coordinator. Alon, we met actually in these precincts a couple of years ago, and I was doing High Holy Days music with TBI, and you were introduced to me. And your father is Australian, mother is Israeli, and you were brought up in Israel.
Sure.
So the work Cantillations has been explained in your program, ladies and gentlemen, but maybe from the horse's mouth, could you explain exactly what your version of Cantillations is? Cantillation, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is a sort of way of expressing words through the voice, through a half-sung, half-chanted method, and goes back ancient days and is common to many, many cultures. Over to you, Alan.
So thank you. So about 3.5 years ago, I came to Melbourne from Israel. I came here to undertake PhD studies in music composition at the University of Melbourne. I have my supervisor here, my principal supervisor, Professor Elliot Geiger. So thank you very much for coming, Elliot. So I came here 3.5 years ago. I got involved at Temple Beth and the Progressive Jewish Movement, and I started to tutor boys and girls for their bar and bat mitzvah. That is a rite of passage. When a boy or girl turns 13, they lead the Saturday service, and they need to lead the service by chanting and reading prayers and chanting out of our Bible and the Torah. So I tutor boys and girls in that field, and I also chant out of the Torah myself. So prior to that, I didn't read out of Torah since I was a bar mitzvah, so it was many years before, when I was 13 years old, and I found it to be quite a spiritual experience. So I had an opportunity to write a piece for a Melbourne Symphony Orchestra workshop with the University of Melbourne, and that's how Cantillations came about. So it does have quotations of those Torah melodies, but that is just one of the aspects. The main three aspects really is dealing with the concept of ambiguity, cohesiveness, and dissociation, that Rabbi Levi can probably explain better than I. It has to do with Jewish philosophy, but I think I won't go into it now. So that's the main idea. Yeah. Yep.
You're going to read your...
Yeah, thank you. If we could. So what will happen is that this is the first section out of Genesis, and I'll chant each verse, and Rabbi Levi will translate it into English. If someone could give me an F sharp, please, that would be really good. Good. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz.
When God began to create the heavens and the earth,
והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו וחושך על פני תהום ורוח אלוהים מרחפת על פני המים.
the earth being unformed and void, with darkness over the surface of the deep, and a wind from God sweeping over the water.
ויאמר אלוהים יהי אור ויהי אור.
And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light.
וירא אלוהים את האור כי טוב, ויבדל אלוהים בין האור ובין החושך.
And then God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness.
ויקרא אלוהים לאור יום ולחושך קרא לילה. ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום אחד.
And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, a first day. Right.
Thank you, Olga.
part of tonight's event is Kristallnacht and Cantata was first. And so please go enjoy yourselves. I'll see you at the end. I'll just follow.
Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. Please be seated as quickly as possible. We don't want to turn into pumpkins. And a lot of people have to go to work tomorrow. Wonderful to see such a big crowd. As I said, my name is David and I'll be conducting the cantata as well. There are a few artists who should be acknowledged here, if not in the program. I would like to thank the people who devised the program. We decided to make it small, but there are website details. But for your information, most people in the choir here now come from the Melbourne Chamber Choir, which is part of the Faye Dumont Singers, and we have a couple of guests. Some members of the choir will also be performing small solo roles. And you'll see that the boy in the middle goes to VCAS, Eli, and he will actually, like some of the members of the choir, will enact various characters. So you will hear sometimes them in this, especially in the first movement, which is rather confrontational, I do warn you, because it is graphically depicting the events of the Kristallnacht. In a very direct manner, but everything is authentic, nothing is fictional. You will hear sometimes the choir being the normal Christian Germans going about their shopping. You will hear sometimes the choir being the Jews being persecuted in Germany after the Kristallnacht. You will hear the choir also being sometimes the mobsters, the rabble-rousers, the Nazis. One of the choir, David Hines, will also enact an SS officer. The child Eli will be a child of a normal German family, so Martine is the mother and Joachim is the father. That's the little German family going about their Christmas shopping. But later, Eli will be the voice of the child, the son of Otto Jontoph Hutter. I'll be introducing the soloists after Ron has explained the concept and everything. The orchestra is drawn from many very, very fine professional sources, and I would like to thank you, Ron, for being the orchestral convener for this event, and thank the orchestra members who have given up their time and their talent to do this. Please give them a round of applause. When I introduce the two soloists, there will be a tenor, Asher Reichman, who's a young Melbourne tenor whom I just fairly recently got to know. I went to a Melbourne Chamber Choir concert earlier this year, and he was the soloist there in a Russian program. And then I worked with Asher more recently in the Yarra Valley Opera Festival, where I was conducting an opera by Verdi, and he was in it. He's got a magnificent voice. He's a student of Leanne Keegan, who is an illustrious international mezzo-soprano who decided to come back to Australia. So one of the young up-and-coming talents. And the baritone, who enacts William Cooper, so both of those soloists are just one person, Otto Jontoph Hutter, the grandfather of Ron, and William Cooper himself. Don Bemrose is of the proud Gungari people of southwestern Queensland, but studied at the Queensland Conservatorium, got a degree there. He came down to Melbourne, and I've known Don for over 10 years because next year, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, we celebrate at the Melbourne Recital Centre in October the 10th anniversary of Deborah Cheatham's opera Pecan Summer, and Don has been involved with that. And tickets are already on sale. So Don and I have worked for 10 years. Don moved then to Canberra and thence to Sydney. I went up to Sydney last month and worked with Don, and he's kindly come down here. And the great news is, he told me the other day, he's going to come back and live in Melbourne. So, whoopee jaw, Don. Great, fantastic. Before I hand over to Ron, just one little thing, and I'll be very brief. My wife and I spent a week in India, a wonderful week in India last week, and I met an Israeli woman, and we had a great chat. And she said that her father was a Holocaust survivor, so she's first generation or second generation, and her father forbade her to say anything bad about the Germans. But then she noticed that he would refuse to buy German goods. And she said, but I don't understand this. She said, that's my thing. You are a different generation. And I can attest that, because I was born in 1948 and I owe the German people a lot. They have helped my career. I have a very active relationship, both professional, business and social, with the German community. In fact, I even have a piece of the Berlin Wall in my collection given to me by the German government. So this history, to me, much of it, of course, it is absolutely true and we cannot forget what happened, but to me it's more of an allegory of what's happening now. Injustice still happens in the world today, and why do we remain silent? But there's one person who has not remained silent. Please welcome Ron Yontov-Hutter.
Thank you for that kind introduction, David. The idea of the Kristallnacht cantata evolved after a feature article I wrote about William Cooper and my grandfather Otto Yontov-Hutter appeared in Germany, America and other places a few years ago. I was living in Berlin at the time and was intrigued by the story. So I called William Cooper's grandson, Uncle Boydie, who's here today, and I'm so honored about that, and had the privilege of meeting him when visiting Melbourne. William Cooper was a man ahead of his time. He was neither Jewish, German, or even an Australian with civil rights. He went against the worldwide trend of appeasement when faced with the horrors unfolding. He was a mensch, a man who saw people as people, regardless of ethnic identity. Put into perspective, Cooper's protest occurred a year after Queen Elizabeth's uncle Edward VIII and his wife Duchess Wallis Simpson were Hitler's personal guests, and 5 months after the shameful Evian conference on stateless German Jewish refugees, where the Australian delegate stated, quote, "We have no racial problem and are not desirous of importing one." Cooper was head and shoulders above them all, and a man with no rights himself. Imagine that. Cooper is timeless, and his worldview highly relevant today in an increasingly fractured world. In writing the article in Cantata, I wanted to honor William Cooper and to say thank you on my grandfather's behalf. William Cooper did not live to see many of his dreams and tireless efforts come true. Today, his descendants, Uncle Boydie, Auntie Daphne, Uncle Vincent, and others, have carried the flag of his message with enthusiastic support from many others. Thank you for continuing to keep William Cooper's mission alive. I also wanted to honor my grandfather Otto Yontov-Hutter, whom I only knew from accounts I heard from my father Erich and his brother Werner of blessed memory. Being arrested that 9th of November and marched off with thousands of others to Dachau concentration camp, bewildered and stunned, he could never have imagined that one day his descendants would thrive in a very different world, and with Israel restored. He would have been too proud to know that his great-grandchildren, Shaul, Daniel, and Sasha, some 85 years later, would attend today's concert. The same day, the bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, and confirmation of his great-great-granddaughter Davita. His other great-great-grandchildren, Ariel, Etaniel, and Iris, are part of a generation that will ensure that what happened will never happen again. I want to be clear that while we must remember to ensure never again, the post-war generation of Germans are not guilty for the atrocities they inherited as their history and narrative. They too have had to cope with difficulties and difficult issues. The cantata's aim is to educate through art. William Cowper is its role model across countries and borders. The first movement, titled Menacing Shadows, describes life in Germany at the time. The confronting text is taken from common street signs and popular slogans in towns and cities across Germany and Austria. People like Bishop Martin Sasser did exist. Sadly, such menacing shadows have far from disappeared. The second movement, titled A Courageous Voice, introduces William Cowper and Otto Jontophutter, who form a metaphysical bond in which they exclaim that we must remember to uphold the values of kindness and decency for all humanity. In the third movement, titled To Those Who Are Blessed, alluding to the biblical book of Genesis, where it states that those who bless Israel will themselves be blessed, William Cowper and Otto Jontophutter reassure each other that the time will come when they will enjoy redemption, dignity, and peace. The cantata ends with a long blast of the shofar blown by Reuben Urban. The shofar is a horn described in the Bible, now blown during the Jewish high holy days, symbolizing resilience, hope, and return from exile. The cantata has been a work in progress with many involved. I would like to thank my colleagues, composer Alon Trigger, and the tireless efforts of musical director David Cram for the cantata's musical development and performance. David has done a sterling multitasking job rehearsing soloists, choir, and mentoring Alon. Thank you to the orchestra, choir, and soloists Don Bemrose and Asher Reichmann for your dedicated participation. Also to Amit Reak, Robert Bonchik of J-Air, Greg Weissman from Sputnik TV for technical support. It's been a long journey that originally included Tal Gottfeld establishing the project's business foundations, which included generous support from the Progressive Jewish Cultural Fund and valuable financial advice, help, and assistance from accountant Stephen Singer. Thank you to Rabbi Gersh Lazarov for his support and making Temple Beth Israel available for this concert today. Tali Kelman, our producer, and Alex Katz have fervently worked wonders to ensure tonight's success in a short space of time. Thank you so much for your dedication and expertise. The Robert Zalzer Foundation gave a generous donation which will help to cover costs of this evening. We are grateful to the Australian Cultural Foundation, which has assisted us by granting DGR tax-deductible status to donors. Such tax-deductible donations from philanthropists, companies and individuals that will help cover some costs and promote this educational and artistic project will be gratefully received and publicly acknowledged. Donations over and above production costs tonight will assist the Mullam Mullam Gathering Place for much needed repairs to their building and also for accommodation for the homeless people here. Many others have been supportive in various ways. We have been warmly endorsed by many well-wishers, which we are deeply grateful for. Of course, Lady Anna Cowan, as I mentioned before, members of Parliament David Southwick and Josh Burns, Tilo Troschke of the Council of Christians and Jews, Peter Kentley of the Beersheba Vision Organization, Rabbi Glasman of St. Kilda Synagogue, Rabbi Reisenberg and Steve Jacobson of the Central Synagogue, Mary Berta from Australian Voices for Israel, as well as others, to name but a few. I would also like to welcome the Honourable Michael Pierce, Consul General of the Federal Republic of Germany. Es freut mich, dass Sie heute hier sind. Danke, vielen Dank. We also gratefully acknowledge the directors of the school music journey who have been very generous and supportive. In Germany, we have had interest and support from Roman Salutov of the Yachid Orchestra near Köln, Ute Kessler in Berlin, who reviewed the German text, and from Claudia Kiesinger of the Marsch des Lebens organization. In the United States, the Los Angeles Museum of the Holocaust have expressed interest in the cantata's performance and in their part of the world. However, without you, the audience, the music would have been just voices in the wilderness. So thank you. May you all be blessed. And before we perform the cantata, I would like to ask, you want to say a few words? Okay, thank you.
Just Arnold Leibler, I need to mention them as
Okay,
well.
and yes, I also should mention Arnold Bloch Leibler. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like, first of all, to thank my colleague Ron for coming up with this extraordinary idea, and to thank, of course, our maestro, Dr. David Cram, the orchestra, the performers, and you, the audience, that by coming here, you're actually supporting this story and spreading it throughout the world, not only here in Australia. I think it's an extremely important story to be told throughout the world. This composing of the cantata was extremely challenging. It's quite a big piece, and I found inspiration in the acts of William Cooper, and I think he's a real role model for all of us. I said, if he did what he did, I can compose a cantata to honor him. So that is it. I'll just speak a little bit from a composition point of view. This cantata was quite a challenge artistically for me as a composer, because although the story is amazing, it's very, very diverse. It has an Australian theme, it has a Jewish theme, it has a German theme. And trying to mend all of those pieces together into a coherent composition was a challenge for me in terms of its concept. So my solution was to create a series of leitmotifs that fade in and out throughout the three movements of the cantata, and they connected conceptually and compositionally together. So you'll hear that William Cooper has a main leitmotif, Otto has a main leitmotifs, and they fade in and out throughout the cantata. Besides the actual performance that we have on stage, we'll have some sound effects that my good friend Idan is helping us arrange, and he composed the soundtrack, so thank you very much, Idan, for coming on board. And we'll have some slides and subtitles that I prepared. Anyone that is sitting on this side of the venue, I think you'll find it a bit difficult to see the subtitles, and it's actually quite important. So yeah, I don't know what's the solution for that, I'm sorry. Yeah, so that's it. So I think we should go just ahead with the cantata, and I've spoken enough. Thank you very much.
not, but it's getting cold. Dark days are coming soon.
Da machte sich auch Josef auf Galiläa, in das jüdische Land zur Stadt David.
Joseph went to Judea, the land of the Jews.
In das jüdische Land zur Stadt David.
Joseph went to Judea, the land of the Jews.
In das jüdische Land zur Stadt David.
Joseph went to Judea.
Papa, Mama, when are the Christmas markets going to open?
Biscuits, sausages,
It's getting dark.
winter's fast approaching.
The festive lights give us cheer, for all we hold dear, for all we hold dear. Unsere Heimat lieben wir sehr, die Heimat unserer Seele.
Who is we?
Ja, wer soll?
Juden sind hier, nicht der Wunsch. Unsere Heimat gehört nur uns. Churches, choirs, practicing. To Christmas lights, ding, 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 dunkle, dunkle Tage kommen bald, dunkle Tage kommen bald, dunkle Tage kommen bald. Jews out of Germany, this is not Judea. Wir müssen die Juden zum Kongress ständig antrennen. Immediately cut them off. Come, darling, nothing happened.
treasured.
Yet it's going to fall. What I see is his story. It's so horrific.
Lately have gone. What will come from this?
I am afraid of the future. What will happen?
Oh my God, how can we go on?
What's happening, Mama?
We must go shopping.
Look, we're already there.
We need to run with us.
We still have time.
They are not cinema stars, but true stars.
Bishop Sussex says,
There is so much talk and screaming.
es gibt so viel Rach und Geschrei. Was die Juden denken, ist bloß eine Lie.
Forbidden to pray, be harsh with them.
No Christmas, but eternal witness.
But I am with no Messiah.
Lamentations of Jeremiah. Raus, ye
Out, you accursed ones.
Heil Goebbels, Heil Hitler, Juden raus! shall be done? What's going on here?
Herr Jontorf-Hutter, come immediately.
Where to?
No questions. Immediately. Out!
Do you wish to see my iron cross?
Now you. No one cares what you have. Schnell!
Papa, where are you going?
Don't worry. Surely misunderstanding.
Bobby, what's going on here? Where are you going?
Get lost, march, march, march.
My dear Florentine children, it's a picnic site, Benedict in November in Dachau. I find myself 1111 Dachau. It's going well here, maybe. My address is to be used exactly as overleaf, with orders this address in the main section at the back. The date of birth must be exactly complied with. Don't worry about me. I hope to see you soon again. I greet you and kiss you warmly. Your Otto. Deutschland, was habe ich dir angetan? O du mein deutsches Land, was habe ich denn angetan? Treue Kind, was habe ich dir, mein deutsches Land?
Never forgive in Levante
I am William Cooper, a Yota man, a man of the earth and the bush. And now a Christian.
Dreamtime. What does that mean?
My people have roamed Australia for 60,000 years. Our ancestors guided us to understand right from wrong. This is our dream time. Now, in addition, Noah and his laws say what is right for all mankind. I am an Aboriginal Christian. Do unto others as you would have undone to I protest the cruel persecution of the Jewish people by the Nazi government of Germany.
Ich bin Otto Josef Hutter, ein deutsches Ausmosaic Glaube. I am Otto Josef Hutter, a German man from the Mosaic faith. I love my country. I don't understand.
Bishop Zasa, do you hear? The laws of Noah or the 10 Commandments. You will not murder, you will not steal, and not steal the truth. History one day will ponder. How could it be that Zasser was a Christian in Germany?
pierce the air across the land. Let the sound bring joy and healing from the love of the outstretched hand. Darkness. Die dunkle Zeit läuft vorbei und bald das Lichterfest. The light restored, rekindled and blessed. The light restored, das Lichterfest. Die dunkle Zeit läuft vorbei und bald.
The light piercing the dark, from despair to hope.
And bring light in times of darkness. Die dunkle Zeit läuft vorbei und bald. Das Lichterfest.
Light piercing the dark,
läuft vorbei und bald.
we are all for